There's some questions humanity has asked for centuries. What happens when something unseen takes control of the human being? Is it demonic possession? Is it a spiritual battle? A medical condition? Or something we still don't fully understand? The Bible speaks directly about evil spirits and the struggle between good and evil. Ephesians chapter 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Mark 5:9. Jesus asked the demon's name to come out. My name is Legion, for we are many. And James 4:7. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. But today we live in a very different world. Modern medicine and psychology provide explanations for many behaviors that previous generations might have considered supernatural. Hallucinations, altered behavior, trauma, and severe mental illness can sometimes resemble what earlier generations described as possession. Yet religious traditions continue to believe that not every spiritual experience can be explained by science alone. So where does the truth lie? Well, tonight we're going to step into that uneasy space between faith, medicine, history, and the unknown. Because sometimes the most frightening questions aren't, are demons real? It's this. What if we're wrong about what we're seeing?
What do you see when you're in the dark and the demons come?
1, 2, married stories for you.
Welcome to Buried Stories. I'm Jeff Mercurio. With me tonight, Wendell Brown. Wendell, do you like this subject?
Well, hello, Jeff. Hey, Steve. Yes, I like the subject. Makes me a little nervous, but I like it. I just don't think it's something to play with. So we're talking about it. I don't think that's playing with it, but yeah, ready for another Tuesday talk. Let's roll.
Gotcha. Also with us, Steve Mercurio. Steve, how are you this evening?
What's up, man? Hey, you guys got your shovels? Go unbury this story tonight, right?
Yeah.
Hope
Yes,
you guys
we are.
got calluses on your hands.
Plenty.
Yep. So let's get to this, man.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the possession of Anna Echlund. Early Iowa, 1928. What you're about to hear comes from the accounts of alleged possession and exorcism. The events were later published in a Catholic pamphlet called Begone Satan. The account was being largely based on testimony according to Father Joseph Steiger and other witnesses. Whether these events were truly supernatural remains a matter of debate. August 17th, 1928, a woman arrived by train in the small town of Erling, Iowa. Her name was given to the public as Anna Echlund. Later researchers identified her as Emma Schmidt. She has come to Erling for one reason, an exorcism. Waiting for her were priests and members of the Franciscan coven. According to the accounts, Anna had willingly agreed to come. But when she saw the priests waiting for her, everything changed. She suddenly became violent. She scratched them. She fought them. And according to the account, she even choked them. The woman who had come seeking help seemed determined to fight the very people who had come to save her. Now let's talk about the clergy. The man leading the exorcism was Father Theophilus Reisinger, a Capuchin priest. Reisinger was not inexperienced. He had reportedly performed an earlier exorcism on Anna in 1912. Now, 16 years later, he believed the darkness had returned. Another important figure was Father Joseph Steiger, the pastor of St. Joseph's Parish in Erling. Steiger was a friend of Reisinger. He was also deeply uneasy about what was about to happen. The case had been entrusted to Reisinger with the approval of Bishop Thomas Drum of the Diocese of Des Moines. The exorcism was to take place inside a convent belonging to the Franciscan sisters. The Mother Superior gave permission, and the doors were closed. August 18th, the first session. According to Begone Satan, Anna's behavior became increasingly violent. She screamed, she howled, she cursed, and the sounds coming from the room were reportedly so horrifying that the sisters had to rotate their duties because they could barely endure listening to it. The account described noises resembling animals, cats, dogs, cattle, and other wild beasts. But then something even more disturbing happened. Anna reportedly reacted violently whenever food or objects had been blessed. Holy water, religious objects, even food that had scarcely been blessed. According to the witnesses, she seemed to know. Now let's talk about Anna's body during this exorcism. As the exorcism continued, the witnesses described Anna's body changing, her face allegedly becoming horribly distorted, her eyes protruding, her lips swelling. The body reportedly became so enormous in size. The account says some witnesses feared that she might actually burst apart right in front of them. She also reportedly refused food, and yet the witnesses claimed she vomited all this foul material. Among the things described were substances resembling tobacco leaves. These details come from the published accounts and should be understood as claims made by the witnesses. Well, let's talk about the voices from Anna. Then came the voices. According to the account, Anna spoke as though different personalities were speaking through her. The alleged entities identified themselves. Among the names were Beelzebub, Judas Iscariot, Jacob, and Mina. Jacob was described as Anna's father. Mina was described as her aunt. Now the warning. Before that, there was also references to many other demons that inhabited her at the time. But at one point, the entity speaking through Anna reportedly threatened Father Steiger. It told him he would suffer because of his involvement. Then came a disturbing coincidence. Father Steiger was later involved in an auto accident while traveling to a sick call. He survived. When he returned to the convent, the account says laughter started coming from Anna. The voice repeatedly mocked him. It served you right. Was it a supernatural warning or simply a terrifying coincidence? We can't know, but according to the account, the priest believed the warning had been fulfilled. Then the final battle, December 23rd, 1928. The exorcism did not end in a single night. It continued in separate sessions through August, September, and finally December. By the final session, Father Reisinger was reportedly exhausted. Father Steiger was also struggling to continue. The sisters were terrified, and the exorcist himself was described as looking like a walking corpse. But Reisinger continued for days and nights. He prayed, commanded, and performed the ritual. Then on December 23rd, 1928, the final confrontation supposedly came. Anna suddenly broke free from those restraining her. According to the account, she rose from the bed, her heels barely touching the mattress. Reisinger commanded the alleged demons to leave. And then Anna cried out the names Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina. Then came the final word hell. Silence followed. Anna collapsed, and for a moment, nobody knew what happened and nobody said a word. Then she finally opened her eyes, and with her own voice, she spoke, "My Jesus, mercy." Then praise be Jesus Christ. The exorcism was declared successful. What really happened? So, Wendell, that was the supposed account of Anna Echlund. And this subject is it's on the spookier side of these things. Um, do you have any other insight from this story?
Well, I think the timeline is important. She was born in 1882. See, it's real easy when because it's at the turn of the century. So when you hear 1912, you might think that her first exorcism was when she was young. She was 30 years old in 1912. So that was the first one. And she was 46 in 1928 when they did the 23-day one over many months. Sounds like she was given away by her father, Jacob, and her aunt, Mina. Mina supposedly being a witch, practicing one. And Jacob just being a incestual, disturbed father. So her life wasn't full of joy. But I guess the first exorcism came when she was, from reports, she was a pious young lady. Like she wanted to follow the Lord and live a good life. And it got to where she started like religious artifacts, church. She couldn't go into church. Religious artifacts started, affecting her and things like that. So that leads up to the first exorcism. Then they thought they got it that time, but then it came back and or never left. And then the 1928 exorcism occurred. It's a scary story. I feel bad for the lady. I mean, it was quite horrific. I found it interesting, the exorcism over the 23 days, over 3 months or whatever it was. I found it interesting that when they got finished with the ritual, which is like a book the size of the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
when they finished the ritual, it went away. I thought that was interesting. I'll talk some more on the church because I know we're going to get into that, but scary story, eye opener. I originally thought that the Exorcist movie was based on this one, but you let me know it wasn't. It was based on another one. But this is, if you ever watched that movie, this is pretty right on what happened to this girl.
Yeah.
And I did have a question for you, Jeff. Did Jesus forgive Judas for his betrayal? Do you know? I don't know.
No.
I don't know. And Beelzebub, I always thought Beelzebub was the devil, Lucifer,
No.
but I guess
No.
he's one rung under him. Some high demon. I didn't realize that. I thought Beelzebub was the devil, but apparently not. So I learned a little bit on this story. I always like learning. when we do a story.
Yeah.
So I learned some on this story. Um, yeah, the priest, he went through some tough times, but stuck with it. It was impressive. And uh, I, from what I take after this one, she had a pretty normal life. Is that what you took? I don't think there were many episodes that were public after this, but yeah, and great story, great story. Glad we covered. It's one I had never heard of, so that's another neat thing too. But definitely on the spooky side.
And to add one thing before I get to you, Steve, Beelzebub. Beelzebub actually means Lord of the Flies in ancient Semitic writing, Lord of the Flies. And he was actually the god of Ekron. Ekron was part of the Philistine city, and the Philistines were actually very, very much arch enemies of the Israelites at the time. So their god in the Philistine city of Ekron was Beelzebub. So that's a little bit of background on Beelzebub.
I heard his specialty was corrupting the pious or the faithful. Also, I thought
Yeah,
I
yeah,
heard that was his. You know how the demons all have
right.
some iconic thing they do, but I heard his is corrupting the faithful.
And that's kind of funny because the Philistines were always trying to corrupt the Israelites because they were faithful. They were following God. So
Yeah.
interesting, interesting. Steve, getting to the story with you. Did you get any different takes on this story
No,
or
I think
anything
you
to
were
add?
I think you were pretty close to accurate from what I had heard. I think the major parts of the story, the 1912 prior exorcism. What's interesting is that one also follows Reisinger. So it'd be fascinating is if there was some sort of historical data to kind of talk about what happened in 1912. I think that's very pertinent to this story itself. You had talked about the different languages, or that she was speaking in different languages. Some of them being, if I was correct, I think I heard or read that one of them was like Greek, Latin. Obviously, they'd mention Latin for sure. Um, and then the one that stuck out, I don't know if this was referenced directly, but they just called it old, like an old language, something they were just completely unfamiliar with. I'm not knowing if this was like an ancient Earth type of language, or maybe was this a language of the demons? I'm not sure. It's fascinating. You talked about how um she had possibly had, floated or whatnot. That was definitely mentioned. And another source that I had looked at had her crawling on walls, potentially, like literally crawling on walls, like a spider or something. But I think it's important as we review this story to think about there's only one source for this, right? There's literally one documented source of this. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't real, and this definitely doesn't mean that there weren't witnesses or anything. I just think that that's important to bring up just because we're talking about one source material for this entire story. And it's a fascinating story and it's scary. Let's be honest. I mean, I think this is the type of subject that always gives me and Wendell the willies, because it's just like you gotta kind of step real slowly with this one. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, you do.
yeah.
All right, you're right about that source. It was from the pamphlet. It was basically a 40-page pamphlet called Begone Satan. And it was accounts that were written up by Steiger, the pastor. So, I mean, that's where we get everything from. So, and I don't know if it's still in publication. Do you know?
I don't know.
I don't necessarily think it is. I think one of the sources that I looked at talked about this specific pamphlet being missing, or
Oh,
maybe it
all
was
right.
filed back in the church somewhere. hidden
Right, right.
away. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's interesting. It
Gotcha.
would be
But
fascinating.
one connection between 1912 and 28 was, Reisinger. Is that how you say his name? Reisinger?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
After the first exorcism, he stayed in touch with her through letters.
Right.
So that's
Right.
why he came back the 28th. That's what it wasn't a coincidence that he did it in 12 and again in 28. He kept in touch with her, and at some point in their correspondence, she said it's back, and that's when the
Ah,
28th was initiated, or the
gotcha.
1928 episode.
Let's talk a little bit about her upbringing. By all accounts, well, by the account written up for Anna Echlund, that her father was very anti-religious, a drinker, incestuous, and he was still married, and then had a mistress, which was her aunt, Mina. So by what I found out was that her father Jacob tried to come on to her, and Anna, being, you know, religious, like, pushed his advances away, and that's when it all started cascading down because her father was, dating her aunt, or had a mistress, which was her aunt. Her aunt was into witchcraft, and she was cursing some of the herbs that they would give Anna. And, they were both actually allowing demons to advance through them to her, I guess. So, do you pick up anything weird? And would that trauma actually cause you to, like, let a door open? Wendell.
Uh, yeah, I mean, that's what I said. They gave her away. I mean, even during the exorcism, it was reported they said that she was given to us. And the priest responded, she never agreed to be given to you, and basically got a "It doesn't matter." She didn't have to. So they gave her away before she was old enough to resist, and, that's horrific. That's just horrific. What do
Yeah.
you do? That's just pure evil, and, the girl never had a chance. Um,
No, no. Hey, Steve, Mina, her aunt, she also said that she had murdered 3 or 4 people. Did you pick up on that? Anything in your research?
No, nothing like that came up. There was the mention of it, just like you're mentioning right now. But from what I understand, there was nothing specifically brought up. There were no source material stating anything to the fact that who it might have been, what it might have been. I mean, she's definitely, at least according to the story, a very evil character. Obviously, opened up part of this doorway to allow Anna to be possessed. According to this, she was one of the reasons, as you guys kind of discussed. And I think that this family trauma is very important as to open up the window for this. If you take one look at it from like, maybe a psychiatrist or psychologist review of this, a lot of disturbed people have a tendency to have a very questionable youth. By questionable, I mean bad youth. A lot of trauma involved. There's a lot of family trauma that kind of leads to this. Now, whether you call it just a behavior or maybe there was the actual door opened up, I think it's important. I think it's a part of the story that cannot be not stated, right? I mean, I think it's a very important understanding of what the source of this demonic possession was. So I think it's important to bring up the father, and it's important to bring up the aunt. Um, you know what? One thing I would have loved to know is, as she was kind of growing up, was there any haunted material, poltergeist like activity around her? I wish one of these sources would have talked about that, because that would have been brought out a very fascinating. Had Reisinger himself witnessed maybe in the earlier exorcism? Did he witness anything? I would have loved to read their letters back and forth, because I think
Mhm.
we'd have so much, probably like a half a story to add on to this, and it would also open up additional source material to why we lead up to this point, right?
Well,
Right,
Jeff,
right.
Jeff, you brought up it could be. You talk about mental illness, and uh, there's some very strange things in mental illness, but there's some things where there's a line that's not crossed. You can be batshit crazy and do all kind of talking and craziness with your eyes and things like that, and how you behave and shake your body and stuff. But still, physics applies in the mental illness. Our earthly physics apply to that condition. When you're looking at people floating in the air, when you're looking at their bodies puffing up instantaneous, I mean, during a process, uh, their skin getting ripped open and writing on it, messages written in their skin. Um, that's not mental illness. Not if you're there watching it happen. You know, you understand what I'm talking about. So I think on the mental illness side, it's real easy to say that this could have been a mental ill, just a mental patient case. And yes, you could say that. But if everything is true that was reported, it's not, because our laws of physics apply to the mental illness patient. To somebody possessed, you get into the paranormal, you're floating in the air and stuff, and I don't care how crazy you are, you can't do that. And not on this planet, but unless there's something else involved. So that's my take on the argument that it could be mental, because we dismiss a lot to mental illness, and we forgive a lot due to mental illness. But when your body's changing physically in front of people, and not in front of people that are betting on you, doing it in front of nuns and priests and um, people that do have some credibility because of their sacrifice and what they've dedicated their lives to. Um, but I just think physics apply to the mental illness patient. And when you get into things that were happening to her, if all things being equal, everything being said is true, uh, this girl was possessed with something, my opinion.
Well, all right. Let's go around. Wendell, do you believe in demonic possession?
Yes. And I think
Steve, how about you?
can I, let me extend
Go
that
ahead.
just a little bit. Yes. And I think the world is what we think. We make the world what we're thinking. And I think it's very obvious nowadays that, yeah, the demons have taken hold of things a little bit. And you can see where the good parts of our world are getting corrupted every day, and it's difficult to watch, and it's scary to watch. And the best of us are now kind of leaning to be the worst of us, and children are usually the ones that are sacrificed, and or or they're impacted a lot from it because they're not learning from people. And I think, not to get on a religious rant, but I just think that uh, if God is not the authority, then you have chaos. And you just can't tell people not to kill other people, and because it's just your opinion. But God tells you not to do that. And if God is torn down, which religions are being attacked all over the world, and men are starting to become their own gods. They think that they can just do whatever they want. Um, and believe me, I'm not telling you to go to church 7 days a week, and I'm not telling you how to behave at all. I'm just saying, when you think there isn't higher power than you, chaos rules, and I think we're starting to see that come home. And yes, Jeff, I believe in demons, and I think they're pretty active.
Steve, same question. Do you think demonic possession is real?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's definitely an element of it. No doubt about it. I do think that people in this world are affected by it. I don't exactly know what leads to it. I don't know what opens up those windows. I think if, for me, if I'm going to sit here and tell you that I believe in ghosts, then yeah, I think I have to extend that world or that belief to things that are beyond humanity. And I think we've witnessed too much to say it isn't. I mean, this particular case, I'm not it's tough to know just because it's such an old story and it's such an old source material. It'd be fascinating if this was like maybe in the 70s or 80s. I think potentially we'd have witnesses. It'd be fascinating if this happened, like I said, 70s and 80s, just for the simple fact that a lot of the people that were potential witnesses, um we could ask questions, and maybe there would have been more source material than just pamphlets, because I guess it's my understanding that it wasn't just Reisinger who had added you know notes or whatnot to this pamphlet. It's my understanding that some of the nuns also signed it and
Right.
stated that they were witnesses of this. So, yeah, I absolutely think that that window is open, that people can be. Again, I don't know what leads to it, and I think that that's probably the scariest part. I mean, what could have opened that? Because none of that could happen, by the way, without God's permission.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
always been
You're
my
right.
understanding, right? I mean,
Yeah.
demons, the devil can't touch this world without God allowing that. So it'd be interesting, and especially in this story, we talked about potentially what led to this. And it sounds, again, just based on what we're hearing, sounds like she was pretty innocent herself. So that's kind of the scariest part of this, in that a lot of this was a curse from her father.
Hmm.
And then we talked about the aunt being into witchcraft. So that's, I think, the scariest part for me beyond what happened to her, is that potentially one or a couple of humans could have that impact on another human, like from a
Right. Yeah.
spiritual level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jeff,
And go ahead.
you said a couple or a while back, your scariest the scariest thing to you would be if everything we were told was false. And I think it's just as scary that if everything we were told is true.
Hmm.
That's horrifying too, especially when you start talking about demons.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, I believe it does take place, and I believe that in modern times, we think we're so brilliant, we're so educated that we kind of we're able to label everything that goes on in a case. Like she spoke many languages. Oh well, she might have heard it, and then it sat in the back of her mind, and she was able to blurt it out. And hallucinations, everything else, we sit there, and are we putting a band-aid on something that's even more powerful than mere humans? You know what I mean? We mask. How many times are you sitting on TV or sitting watching TV and you see like commercials for medicine to make you feel better constantly? Are we drugged? Are we just masking what's actually going on internally? What do you guys think?
Well, we know that we've learned so much supposedly from a medical standpoint in the last 100 years. um and I think that that's important to take into consideration. But if my details of this story are correct, Risinger, there, it's out there, I'm not sure if it's in the pamphlet, but Risinger was talking to some sort of medical practitioner about this,
Right.
seeking his wisdom and understanding from a medicinal standpoint.
Mhm.
And again, I could be completely wrong about this because it was just on the second source material that I looked at, um, where it talked about how the doctor either may have seen her, or based on what he was written about, kind of stated that this particular case was beyond medicine. So I'd be fascinated to understand, was he a general practitioner? Was he a psychologist, psychiatrist? All those things. Because I mean, when you think about what happens today in what we would think of potentially as possession scenarios, it again, I'm no exorcist and not quite familiar, but at least in the stories that I am familiar with, medical practitioners are brought in to witness, to be a witness, so that they can speak upon what they're seeing from, we talk about people with credibility all the time. In the UFOs, we always bring up scientists. In other situations, we bring up police officers, firefighters, um, uh, men and women of the military, right? So in a situation like this, you might not have a firefighter or a police officer or anything speak about that. You'd probably have somebody of faith, a priest, something like that, and you'd probably have a medical practitioner there because both of them are pertinent to a situation like this. Especially like I said, in today's world, I'm almost certain you have some sort of medical practitioner available, maybe not in every situation. But I believe the Catholics do. I believe that they bring in psychologists or psychiatrists or because they want to know. They want to have an understanding. And they also want somebody to be able to pause the situation from a medical standpoint and bring in specific reasoning and stuff like that. So I think it's fascinating what you're bringing up, Jeff.
Well, in today's, well, not in, even in today's, the way the Catholic, eh, the rite of exorcism goes, I mean, somebody would call, and say, "Hey, I may be possessed." Well, the priest would go and do a visit first, to get some background story and to just get a feel of what's going on. But they also, before anything is done, they would also, especially in modern days, they get or they get some psychiatrists, especially atheist psychiatrists, so they could get a concrete explanation of what may be going on. And then if the psychiatrist goes, "Hey, I can't explain this," then they go through and nowadays they do have doctors monitoring the situation and stuff. But Wendell, do you think our modern wisdom is masking something?
Yeah. The the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and without it, you lose the ability to reason. And I think that's what you see in our society now, the loss of the ability to reason, because there's no fear of God. And
Yeah,
that means there's no wisdom. So, yeah, that's my take. And that's one of the strongest things I've learned during my life, because I've went through the stages like everybody else, that if I'm just a good guy, that it'll be okay. And the like I said, I'm not an advocate to go in church. I have my problem with church, but mostly that involves people. I don't. It's not the doctrine or the religion or anything like that. It's more the communion, I guess, that or the community spirit thing that
yeah,
starts to
yeah.
annoy
Not
me.
the
But
communion part.
yeah, it's not the community I envisioned.
Right,
You
right.
know, But no, I think the strongest thing is when you take God's authority out, you have chaos, and it's so true. I don't know if you ever saw, I forgot what the movie's name was, but it's really boring. I made my kids go watch it with me and at the theater, and and the whole movie is pretty slow, and it's, not gonna it's not an action film, but the whole premise was that you telling somebody not to steal is not right. That's just your opinion. You have to say God tells them not to steal. The reason you don't steal is because God says not to steal. And if we do not have God's authority, we are in the doomsday scenario. And you see it in our society when they start taking God out of things. Um, there's no authority to anything we do. There's no authority except other people. And how many of us we it's just another man's opinion. It's like directions to build something. It's just another man's
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
So, but yes, I think the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and when you lose it, you get chaos, and that's, I think, some of our society is experiencing that.
You know, the most modern, well-documented, possession case was that we did a show about it, the Amons family in Gary, Indiana. That was in
Mhm.
2011. So that is modern days, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
let's talk about, faith as we go through this. Now, Anna was growing up, she was part of the church, where she was part of, like, the Catholic religion, she's going to church. Do you think maybe the, father and aunt intervening may have caused her to lose faith, Steve?
Well, I think trauma can hit you in many different ways, but I would think particular to this scenario, it could have done one of two things. What she experienced with her father and her aunt could have made her more religious personally, right? She could have looked at her faith as being the umbrella that she needed to get through such trauma, right?
Mhm.
Or she could have essentially turned against it and said, "Hey, I was asking you and I believed in you and I asked you for help in this terrible situation and I never got any response, you know, from her faith. Therefore, why should I believe?" You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me it's either going to drive her further away or it's going to bring her much closer. In this particular situation, it sounded like, based on what we understand in this pamphlet, it sounded like it potentially brought her closer. What would be fascinating to learn is the years between 1912, and it kind of goes back to those letters. It'd be
yeah.
interesting to understand what happened to her between 1912 and 1928, right?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
she continue with her faith? Did her faith get stronger? Did she steer away? What led to her having this second episode?
Yeah, yeah, and see, what I'm trying to do right now is trying to find maybe the crack in where the door started opening, Wendell. Do you have any insight as
They,
far as, like, d Go ahead.
no, I just what you're talking about, I think her faith saved her life. I would think she would be burning in hell now um, if she didn't have the faith. The faith kept her in touch with the church. And actually, Steve, you talked about between 12 and 28. I did hear that there was, I don't know, it's not a report necessarily, but somebody implied that her life would be easier if she did forsake God. A demon
Mm,
said her life would be easier if she just let go and joined him, and she didn't. And I think her faith saved her life. Uh, and because it would have, like you said, Steve, it would have been real easy to forsake God, say, "You didn't help me, and, I'm going the other way, so my
oh, do
life's
you?
easy." And she who knows who what she probably may have been a big movie star or something, if she would have forsaken God, who knows?
Yeah.
Now, if I can interject, then perhaps this was a test of faith because, like Steve was saying, the devil has to go to God to get permission to do anything. So, you think it might have been, a test of faith?
Well,
Anyone?
I
I
think
mean, yeah, go ahead, Wendell.
I think she was put in that situation by other individuals. I think the whole soul thing is true, our souls and all the little religious stories you hear that you think are myths are true, and they had the ability, and they did damn her soul for a while,
Hmm,
my opinion.
interesting.
And it's
Interesting.
unfair. Honestly, if you think about it, if you have control of your own soul and you have your own choices and your own destiny, right? Then it begs the question, how could another soul or entity or something of that, how could they have command or put your soul in a spot where you're essentially vulnerable like this?
Well,
I mean, it begs the
that
question,
was the
right? Like,
That was the
I mean,
point of this one, though. They gave her away before she was, if you want to call it, of age. They gave her away as an infant, and so she had no consciousness to fight it.
yeah, but it just begs the question, I think, Wendell, that how would God? I mean, God has,
Yeah.
if we're gonna go, God has the ultimate power over everyone's soul, right? I mean, the Creator and everything. So that's where I think I'm asking the question, Wendell, is how could how would God allow somebody so young, vulnerable, innocent to for their soul to be given away by another human being? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah,
Like,
I think
if
it's
you
in that.
look, I think that's the question here because look, in a lot of possession scenarios, and again, we look at other ones. There's the Roland Doe or whatever.
Roland Doe, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in their case, from what we understand at that one, at least the small sources I looked at, that one had something to do with him supposedly playing with a Ouija board. If you guys remember, his aunt bought. And by the way, another
Yeah.
situation where an ant's involved, right?
Yeah.
Hey, beware of
Always an
ants.
ant. Right.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, it's my understanding, at least, that the source material on that one is an aunt used to play with a Ouija board with Roland, and
Yeah.
the aunt passed away. Roland supposedly was attempting to communicate with the aunt and therefore led to this. So it's interesting that at least in both scenarios, the something happening with the soul happens at an age where they're not even an adult yet, which kind of begs the question, like, how could another human have that kind of control over your soul? Usually you would think that a human would have to open up that window themselves and therefore be vulnerable to such things by choices you had made. But again, I'm just kind of looking at it from a different.
Well,
From everything that I've learned is the angels and even the fallen angels, they're not souls, they're pure spirit. So we're souls. So even if like one of the spirits took over her father or something because being incestuous is something demonic,
Yeah.
in itself, and to grant them the authority to take her soul, or try to at least, because like Wendell said, I think God interjected in that. But I don't know, like, how free our decisions are, because you got to watch sometimes, if we're pure souls and part spirit, well then you got to take those away, because we also got the human mind too. So there's a lot of moving parts in
I
this.
think it's part. I think it's part of God's plan with that we don't understand. That
Right.
we get taught on some ways to learn a little bit of it, but why doesn't God just annihilate hell and just make
Yeah.
and all of us just be good, and we just go to heaven, and this is a streamlined 70-year experience, and at the end we all go to heaven, plain simple, period, no matter what. But it's not. The plan is that we have free will, and I do not think our existence is irrelevant. There's a
Right. Right.
when we're here, we're on the clock, and the and it impacts things down the line. I think our souls are eternal. I just not to get too deep into this, but
Yeah.
there. I think there is heaven. I think there's, but it's a whole spiritual world we don't understand. Who knows where we go here? It may not be straight to heaven. It may be on a bypass first. You go around the interstate a couple times before you get to heaven. Who knows? And it may be a result of how you live your life, how many times you go around the interstate. I don't know. Who knows? And that's the ultimate questions that I don't think anybody truly knows. But I think that we're given the knowledge in millions of different places, and to put it together is quite a task. But the but I think our existence matters. I think what we do matters, what we think matters, what we, you know, I've said before, I don't think God's going to swoop down and just solve all your problems for you. but you better believe in him because there are times you need him to get by. And,
Yeah,
um, but that's just
I
my
could agree
my
with that.
feeling on it.
Now let's talk about the Catholic Church and this incident, and many other exorcisms, because a lot of the times every exorcism that I've seen so far has been from a Catholic Church standpoint. So you got the rites of exorcism, but you got to get permission to perform an exorcism, and it goes higher up. So let's talk a little bit about that, because it don't make a whole lot of sense to me that you got to ask permission to do what your service was intended to do in the first place, and that was to save souls. So, Steve, your thoughts on asking permission? Can I do an exorcism? Because how much more authority do you have to do it than the Pope, or anybody else, a cardinal or bishop? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, especially in modern times. I think in the past it clearly must have been very different. Because if you think about back then, they didn't really, at least this time, I don't think they had a lot of quick communication. So I think you had mentioned, Jeff, that this one went specific to the Archdiocese of Iowa, right? If
Yeah.
I'm okay. So the question is, at that level, did he the arch that did they have to go to the Vatican in this sense? Did they have to write letters? Did they, because back then I'm sure most of it we talked about the communication between Anna Echlund and Reisinger, right? We talked about letters going back and forth. So I mean, was this how much planning? It'd be interesting to know, to try to answer your question, Jeff, regarding specific to this situation. um, how much planning went into this? How much earlier in this scenario? Because we only get the sense from August 1928. Generally speaking, I know Wendell had brought up some other source material, but the question would be, how much planning did Reisinger have to do, and permission to get from who, and how high did that go up? Did that have to go back to the Vatican? I think
Yeah,
today,
but
I think, but I
going with that, I'm sorry,
oh, go ahead.
but simply, why does he have to ask permission?
Because I think it's a protection of the church. Okay, look at it this way. We talked about modern times, right? And the
Mhm.
one thing we didn't touch upon, Jeff, we talked about psychiatrists and psychologists being there to provide an opinion from a scientific or medicinal standpoint, right? But also, going into that, you would have had, especially in today's world, I would assume you'd have MRIs of the brain, right? You'd have diagnostics ran. You'd have probably blood work to see what's going on with the blood. So all of these things, and I think that the reason for that is the protection of the church. I mean, if the church just went around performing exorcisms every other weekend, I think you'd lose the meaning and understanding in that situation. The exorcism has to be of the highest. I mean, they don't go around. I mean, there's got to be a lot of elements. So, I mean, it's my understanding, it's not just the priest going out and visiting an individual to try to figure out, like we talked about, there's probably medical practitioners, but not only that, Jeff, there's probably recordings done in the
Mhm.
modern times. You want to be able to take material back to the church to go, this is a big case study of what we're looking at. And would they have had to do the same thing back then? I'm sure they had some sort of protocol to decide who gets an exorcism and who doesn't. Now, why that has to go up so high, I think it's honestly for the sanctity of the church. You know what I mean? It's
So
protection
we're
of the
talking.
church.
So it sounds like the church is trying to protect their business. You know what
I
I
don't want to
mean?
call it business. I don't want to call
Well,
it business.
I do call it business nowadays, because in most churches, and it goes on a lot of denominations, it's, try to fill seats, and try to start getting money, and who's got the biggest church, and light display and things like that, which, I mean, it is what it is. But in this exorcism, they don't want like a stain on the religion or that diocese, but still, I mean, you're trying to save souls here and you preach saving souls, and yet, you do this research and then you have to ask and wait for the okay to perform what you're supposed to be doing anyway, again, saving souls. But
Yeah, and to go back to your point on that, Jeff, though, right? Like, you have what I'm looking at is, think about the church in a stage, right? The
uh
church is a play, right? You have all your followers out watching this play, right? So you have all of your church followers and members sitting out in the stands looking up at the stage, right? Then you have the
okay,
stage itself, which is, kind of is the priests that come out and perform every church, every week and everything. You have all of that going on. But then think about all the stuff that goes around in the background, the stuff you don't see going on during the play, right? That would be probably the diocese, and that would probably be up the ladder, the upper management per se of the church. And here's the weird thing about that is, you were talking about how saving souls is kind of what their potential job or service or business is, right? But think about it this way, they don't really publish exorcisms. And if you think about it, an exorcism would be the highest level of saving a person or a soul, and it's not even communicated really, and it's kind of a secret part of the church, right? They don't publish exorcisms and they don't want to talk about them. I mean, they occasionally the subject comes up if there's is something that goes on in history or anything, right? But generally speaking, when you're talking about exorcisms, it a lot of times it's kind of a hidden secret. And if it's about saving souls, Jeff, then wouldn't you think that that would be the first thing? Hey, we don't just preach the word of God, we exercise the word of God, right? We take it to a much higher level.
hmm
So yes, Jeff, I do think that there's a business per se of the church. Um, but then on the flip side of it, I do think that there's a service of the church as well, right?
all right, Wendell, they do hide the exorcism. They keep it close to the vest. Now, if you were handing that out at the beginning of mass, wouldn't that get more people into your church because this is real?
You would think, but I kind of agree with both of you. On the getting approval, I understand the logistics of that. Steve's right on it. It's protect the sanctity of the church, and that's fine. But once you get that approval, you're basically saying, yeah, we got a demon in Iowa, or we got the devil in Iowa. Somebody will get it. Why wouldn't Cardinal Hammer and Bishop Balboa be heading out there on their horse to Iowa? Why wouldn't I understand not sending the Pope? It's going to be dangerous. Could be dangerous. So let's not send the Pope, just good for his safety. But why in the world would you not send you got something better to do? I mean, you're right, Jeff. That's what you're there for, is to save souls. What what in the hell are you doing? Why are you got a budget to plan? You got a lunch to go to? Why do you pull a local priest out of the bullpen to fight the devil in Iowa? Why aren't you sending some experienced? I mean, obviously this guy was experienced and he ended up turning out okay. But I'm just saying,
Right.
in the secrecy afterwards, you're dead. In my opinion, you're dead on. Why wouldn't you be marketing that for the business side of the church? You need us. These demons are real, and you need to follow what we're teaching, because this is look, they're here. Why wouldn't you advertise that? They don't. They cover it up in secrecy. Now there is an element of keeping privacy for the victim,
Yeah.
and I understand that. But the exorcism itself, yeah, I would think you'd be highlighting that, and but they don't. And
Especially with the fact that they use pseudonyms for names anyway. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
part of the protection.
yeah.
as it
And
goes, you know?
but what's a bishop got better to do than I mean, actually, I would think they'd be halfway excited about it. I mean, scared because they're here, but and concerned and worried because they're here. But at the same time, that's why are you here? What's your existence for in this organization? It's to save souls and to fight evil and tell people how to they can behave and fight evil themselves. And I don't think you have anything better to do. But the picture we all get is you get approval and then they throw it down to a lowly priest in a local parish and go get them. Go do your best. I don't understand that. Why wouldn't, like Jeff, you mentioned one time, why wouldn't you have a SWAT team of bishops to go do this? And um, that doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes their lack or their resistance resistance for approval. I'm okay with that until you get approval. You know, you got to jump through the hoops. We got to make sure this isn't a mentally, retarded person that's just acting out, and we're not going to go in and throw religious artifacts at them because they have a mental illness. But once you're over that hurdle and you do get approval, I think the approval is a big deal. Once it is done, then unleash the hounds after them, but they don't, and I don't understand it. But a lot of it's part of the business, and I personally, I think a lot of it's laziness. I think people got some cush jobs, and they have status, and that's just not for me to do. It's for you to do, and yeah, and that's concerning.
And,
Well,
going to the SWAT team side of things, you know, the most modern SWAT team of that sort of unit was Ed and Lorraine Warren. They see a story in the paper, bam, they were at the door. So it's like the outsiders were doing what the church was intended to do. And there's another one, I think his name was Sergeant Ralph Sarchi. He was a New York detective, and then he started helping people like Malachi Martin. And then he started publishing things because, as an outsider, what did he have to keep secret? So they would start actually publishing things because this is real. But,
It makes you
so
question why the church
yeah,
would cover anything up. It
right.
almost
As
makes you
far as the
think
covering up,
the church has been infiltrated.
well,
Because why would you cover it up? There's no reason. There's no reason to cover it up. It's
well,
what you do.
Wendell, I'll throw something at you on that. First of all, I love your idea. Boy, would I love to see a full SWAT team, helmets, gear, but instead of police, it says something like Catholicism or some. That would be, man, that would be amazing to see, right? Go in with a cross that busts in the door, like boom, and they sit outside and there's priests praying, and then there's the hardcore angels like nailing the door. We're going to get in there and we're going to exorcise. That would be amazing to see. They should honestly, Wendell, I think you got a movie idea on this one.
Well, even in
But
this case, Anna Echlund,
yeah,
they had 6 nuns, and they
you're
told
right.
they picked the strongest nuns in the
Yep.
convent
And they
to
still
hold her
had
down.
trouble holding her
Now
down. Yeah,
you're telling me we don't have some stocky bishops and cardinals somewhere in the
I
land
agree.
of Catholicism that could have went there and held her down? Why did you have to get 6 nuns? It's almost like they want to play from the weak. They want to play from the weak
Well,
side to the strong and let God do all the heavy lifting instead of them.
well, let's go here to answer your question. Why they potentially keep this more silent and everything. Have we ever asked the question how many of these have ever failed? Now, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there,
yeah,
right? If you have successes, you can't look. I'm guessing, if I had to guess, you're not batting 1,000 here. I mean, I'm just
no.
throwing that out there. You're not batting 1,000. So if you have a lot of successes, how many potential failures do you have? What's the batting average? And I hate to call it that for something as serious as this, but just to get the idea to you guys, how many failures, how many strikeouts do you have here?
But
Because
even your failures, though, could be successful marketing for for your, followers to act right and do the right thing and protect themselves as much as they can, because we always can't come to the rescue because we don't bat 1,000.
agree,
Even your
well,
failures could be successes in
Right.
some
And
way.
to
yeah,
go up upon that what you brought up, Steve. Now, Father Malachi Martin, he talks in his book, or he talked about failures. And these priests actually take it on the chin pretty hard because there are consequences for failure. Some of these priests actually end up, in a home or put away. They are actually put away like at the nursing home and taken care of by the church, but there is a price to pay. The demons,
Yeah, I
they
imagine.
don't play around, and there's a price to pay for
yeah.
failure. So we don't know, and yeah, I
And
could
I
see
think
that
that's
being
the
kept a
reason.
secret.
I
That could
That's the
be.
reason to keep it secret. What are the consequences, like you said, Jeff, and what are the effects of this? Um, I'll just say that, when we look at this, I think that's why this goes to answer your question, Jeff, why you need to permission at some of the highest levels here. Because potentially when you go to war like this, think about it, a government has to go to war. They have to they're supposed to seek especially here in America, you're supposed to go to the Senate essentially in the Congress and just say, "Hey, we need your backing on this," because a lot of people have to be involved in a decision like that. And I think it's the same thing. You're going spiritual warfare here. Yeah, there's going to be consequences. Could be consequences at the highest level, right? Spiritually.
Mhm.
Therefore, what are the sacrifices made? And everything else. And so I think it answers a lot here. And by the way, there's a modern person out there doing this stuff right now. His name's I believe it's Reverend Billy Bean. Look him up. He's
Mhm.
very high in the paranormal community,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah.
guy's been out there for years. He's been on Coast to Coast AM. He's been on a lot of these podcasts that I've listened to. I just listened to him this week. I'll send you guys the show. He just wrote a book. I think it's his 12th book or 13th book. I think his 13th book, talking about tales of the stuff that he's experienced being out there. I don't think he's Catholic, but I do
Mhm.
believe that he is
Right.
he is a
Well,
bishop, a reverend. Yep.
yeah, Reverend is not Catholic.
No,
That's a
but I mean,
non-denomination.
there's
Right.
other
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
other Christian. I mean, Jeff,
Right.
it wouldn't be the Catholic. Who would have to decide in your religion? Like you're Christian.
Actually,
Who would
I don't
decide?
know. A lot of the times, the pastor decides. I You got a good question there. I can't answer
Yeah,
that question right off the hip, but I
yeah,
I do know the ones that make sensationalized or that end up being stories are usually from the Catholic religion side
yes,
because they do document stuff and it leaks out.
yep.
But trying to keep it secret, I don't know if that's the best approach. But then again, like you said, if you're not batting 1,000 and you're actually losing and there's some consequences to it, that might be the reason because we don't want a part of that loss. You know what I'm saying?
Well, think about it. At the end of X, now I know it's a movie.
Mhm.
I 100% understand that. But what happens at the end of the original Exorcist?
Oh,
What
yeah.
happens?
Yeah. He falls down the stairs. He
Yeah.
jumps out.
So technically speaking, one could say that exorcism that was performed was a failure,
Yes, it
right?
was.
We'd all,
Mhm.
because I mean, even though it leads on to other movies where that father is brought back in, I think it's Exorcism. Again, we're talking
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
movie. I
They're
understand,
movies.
but
Right.
it's brought back up, and what happened to him, Jeff? Just like you mentioned in the movie, he ends up in a nursing home, if I'm understanding, and he's got the the demonic spirit in
Yeah.
him now.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
they were successful out of getting it out of Reagan, but technically speaking, they failed at the exorcism itself to banish the demon away. But and it's just an example. So it's a look. I think this story right here, it's one, whether real or fictionary. I think it's a telltale, a cautionary story, to assist people in understanding of things that are greater than themselves, on both a level of higher than them and much lower, right? I mean, because if in order to have the spiritual warfare here, you have to have the faith of the church and you have to have demons involved, right?
Oh, hold
So
on. Are you calling this Anna Echlund just a story or
no, I'm saying,
oh, okay.
look, what I'm saying is I can't tell you if this particular story is real or not.
Right,
We
right,
have one source material. I think something absolutely happened. Are the details in that pamphlet word for word what happened? I don't know, and I can't speak for that, but I think it's a very cautionary tale of potential consequences of your actions. And unfortunately for Anna, it doesn't sound like it was her actions
right,
based on the
right.
limited information we have. So I mean, I think some when it comes to me in this particular story, I think something definitely happened, something of a spirit. I do think it happened. Because here's the thing, you can look, this church still exists. In
Oh,
one
yeah,
of the
yeah,
sources I
yeah.
was looking at, they were showing you Google Earth and they were
Mhm.
showing you this church still exists, right?
Yeah.
So I think something happened there. I don't know if it was this exact story and whether she was honestly possessed by demons, but I definitely think the protocol in 1928 and 1912 were completely different than they are now. Back then, they didn't have MRI machines. They said that the closest psychiatrist back then was 200 miles away in Iowa City. Okay. So
Right, right. But
I'm saying,
they
yeah,
did bring in a doctor, and the
yes,
doctor examined and gave that information over to Theophilus. That's
yep,
why, it did go to a scale higher. But Wendell, let me come to you for a second. You brought up the Cardinal SWAT team, which
I
is a
love it.
good thing to think about. But when now, as I said, a failed exorcism takes a toll, and each exorcism takes a toll on the priest that is performing this ritual. So why isn't the priest a young, buff, massive guy able to, you know, take all this endurance and the punishment? Why isn't he going through training as well and not just, we're gonna medically check out the person that's claiming to be possessed?
Well, first of all, I think Steve and now you just pissed off demons because both of you froze up for a second. But
Oh yeah.
besides
Yeah.
that, good luck with that. Um,
Mm.
the I like it when we toss things back and forth because you learn a little bit. I think I learned a little bit even while we were talking. Um, in regards to your SWAT team. Maybe there's a reason why the lowly local parish guy goes because I think we say the word evil a lot, and I don't think we give it its just due. You're talking, like you said, in a failure, even though I think even a failure could be a successful marketing campaign for the church because you're proving the existence of what you're preaching about. But the reason maybe why the Cardinals don't, besides laziness and fear, and they don't want to upset their cush status, um, is because evil is eternal also, and it's evil. The priest that fails could get drug into hell. It could be his immortal soul at stake. So I think maybe the successful exorcisms are a glorious attribute to God beyond words. It's such a big victory. And then the failure could be just as bad. In evil, there's no mercy. There's no good. You gave it a good shot. Good job. You failed. She's still possessed, but you go back and do your thing. It's not like that. Like you say, it could kill you. and it could damn your soul. So I think um, the term evil is underestimated a lot, but in true evil, especially when you're talking about demons, there is no break, there is no let up, there is no um, nice try to it. Yeah, I mean it could be the end of you, and maybe that is why the lower clergy get these assignments um, with the blessing of the upper clergy, but because there's no mercy with evil, and and I don't think a lot of people understand what that condition could possibly be with no mercy. I mean, we're kind of engineered and believe and that we do the hard work, hard work, hard work, and then there's a let up, a break, and then we'll do the hard work again. Sometimes there's not a let up, and I think when you're talking about evil, there is no let up. So it is a winner take all scenario on these things. And so what I learned during our talk tonight was a little bit, because I was adamant, get the cardinal out from behind the desk and get him down there beside her bed. But I can also see knowing what they know and at the level of they know good and evil and righteousness and all that. Um, there's a reason why somebody lower than somebody who thinks they're important in the church goes. But
Okay. With that being said, and that's a good explanation. I know we're running a little bit longer than usual, but let's get into the contour or the changes of the bodies that she went through. I see videos of contortionists, and that kind of freaks me out because the body's doing unnatural things. Well, in this story, her body was doing very unnatural things. So, Steve, how do you feel about that? And would you take part in something like this? I mean, it's got to be the creep factor is way up there.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you think, if you believe that things of a spiritual level, meaning things that are beyond our understanding and what they can do to humans, look, think about this. Look what humans can do without, I mean, the strange things. For example, there was the climber who got their arm stuck underneath a rock while they were up there climbing and had to use a pocket knife to cut off his arm.
Mhm.
I mean, think of how much that would have taken to perform I mean, I can't fathom that, right? Like,
Right.
there's
Mhm.
no way. I mean, you hear the stories of a mother who saw a child get ran over by a car, and it's still on top of them, and somehow, some way, a woman finds the strength to lift up a part of a car that weighs a ton, right? Like, how is that possible? So if and there are examples out there. Like, I'm just throwing you potentially two, right?
Mhm.
So if the human mind has the capability to perform such acts in very strange situations, emergency situations, situations where you don't really have a lot of time to think, then if that's possible, think about the powers that we don't see and what they have the capability to do to a human body, right?
Mhm. Yeah. But the one thing I would say in both of those situations, the examples you brought up, very extraneous situations. There was one, well, they're both examples of survival. And sometimes we don't credit maybe a touch from God of lifting a car or giving your mind enough peace to actually cut through your arm to survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
mhm.
So, Wendell, if say you were doing an exorcism and they started crawling up the wall, they levitated and they're clawed, they're like cat like feline like clawed up on the wall. Now in this story, Anna was, you know, she levitated and jumped up the side of the wall and actually dug her nails into the wall, and the nuns had to pull her down. I mean, that's craziness. But just the facts of the situation of what the person is performing or not performing. That's a bad example. The demons are making the body capable of doing these situations. The person has nothing to do with it, but the horror that's got to bring, you know?
Yeah, but if you're the one performing the exorcism, I think it would actually energize you. I think it's why you're there. It would give validation that you were needed.
Mhm.
And if you're in that line of work, I don't think you're going to be shocked at things like that. Um, I wouldn't be shocked, but that's because I do a Buried Stories podcast and we talk about all kinds of weird things. But so I would watch.
I would
I'd still be amazed, but I wouldn't freak out. I wouldn't run down the hall like the nuns did. And
I'd
I
probably
mean,
shit my pants.
yeah, I
I
wouldn't do
ain't gonna
anything like
lie.
that. I mean, I would be amazed and take in what my eyes are seeing. But I think if you're in that line of work and you're doing it, I think it would
Yeah.
energize you even more because there's no doubt at that point. You know, there's no I'm sure at some point a priest doing an exorcism has doubt, has like if person's just laying there and acting a fool, it could be either or. It could be our earthly physics in a mental illness case, and I'm here to do an exorcism. Obviously, they believe it or they wouldn't do it. But but I think if to see that in front of you, on one hand, it would energize you. On two, it better tell you you better have your A game because you're dealing with some serious dark forces.
That's why your faith
Yes.
better be rock
Yeah,
solid.
it better be. You
And the
better
other
have your A
thing
game.
is what the priests usually say, you better go in with a clean conscience
Yep.
because the demon knows your secrets
Yep.
and he blurts them out.
Yep.
So, like Steve was saying, I'd crap my pants. Well, I would fear that he'd yell out and blurt something I did when I was 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd be like,
Well,
oh, that wasn't me.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was stated as part of the
Yeah.
story.
Not only what
Yeah.
you did, what you thought.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't that
So I
be
mean,
yeah.
this was an incredible story, but it's very eye opening. I don't think a lot of our people in society actually take this into consideration that this is real. I
Yeah.
mean, this goes beyond being an influencer and what your government doing. There's a higher game being played right now, and that's for all of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think in general, affecting things like in our society, I think that's pretty common demonic behavior. Actually possessing somebody and
Mhm.
being on this earth in their body and not in your usual spiritual world where you impact people thinking and doing bad things and killing each other and things like that. But when you actually possess somebody, I mean, you're talking about a spiritual entity being on earth in a body like we
Yeah.
are. I think that's why it's so rare. I think that's quite a leap from even them to jump into our bodies and basically become a human on earth, which is not
Mhm.
what God intended for them
Right.
in
Right.
my understanding of things. But
And
Gotcha.
let me say this just so it's out there. We're talking about cases that obviously deal with
yeah,
Catholicism, Christianity, and everything, but we've covered a lot of stories regarding Native Americans and everything. I think that this is a universal. I don't think you may hear it as much, but I think that this is a pretty universal. This isn't something that it just affects Christianity or Catholicism. I think this is a universal human problem. You probably won't hear about it, but I believe that almost every organized religion on this planet has some sort of protocol or process with taking care of
yeah,
situations like this. It's definitely well documented that Native Americans do, and it is I'm pretty sure there's of the Jewish faith. I wouldn't hesitate. I don't know that much about um you know, other some of the other religions, but I would almost guess that
It is
every major organized religion
right.
on this planet has protocol and process of this.
Yeah.
We just may not hear about it.
And they all do.
Yeah,
Trust me, I've looked into it, they all do. I mean, because like you said, it's universal,
yep,
and the world is big, and it's the reason we're Catholic heavy on this one is just because of the story we were
absolutely,
covering, you know?
absolutely.
But, I mean, I know it goes every corner of the world. There's not
Mm.
one place not touched with the spirits that are touching, us over here or affecting us over here, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
Wendell Wendell, last words on the Anna Echlund possession.
Eh, Fascinating story. I liked it. I liked that we covered it. I learned a lot from it. Um, I think it has a lot of, um, like you say, today we have professional exorcists that I think it's dangerous for people to get involved in this kind of thing if you do not have faith. If you just think you're a ghost hunter and you try to go toe to toe with a demon, I think you're asking for tragedy. Um, the faith better be that your faith better be there and it better be strong. And fascinating story, one I didn't know about. Enjoyed researching it. Sad for the girl. I'm sure
Yeah.
she lived a life of turmoil, probably until death, but quite till she was 46. It was hell on earth. But um, hopefully something, hopefully good things came out of it after all of this exercise. Hats off to the priests that stuck with it and put their life and their soul on the line to do the right thing and to fight God's fight, and all kind of respect for people like that. Um, but no, I'm glad we did this story. It was an interesting one, and I know it's one a lot of people don't know about.
Right. Yeah. Well, now if I got my facts straight, after this exorcism, she kinda went into living a more solitude life. There wasn't much talked about, but she was still plagued by these demons. Um, but she never sought an exorcism after this, and I know she pretty much died in obscurity. But even the name Anna Schmidt, it's been researched. They don't really can't pinpoint the person, so we don't really have anything to research except what is written in the pamphlets.
I would hope
Steve,
I would
go
hope
ahead.
God would put his foot down if even though they gave her away, gave her
Right,
soul to the
right.
demons and to the devil. I would hope that in her either last days or after she died, I would hope that God put his foot down and corrected things for her.
Hmm. Steve, any last words on the Anna Eklund possession story?
Well, I mean, this is to me, we've covered stories that are scary. And I mean, obviously, the UFO stories we talked about are scary. A lot of them are scary. Let's be honest.
True.
We've talked about the giant. It was scary. I mean, a lot of these things are scary. I we talked about this before, Wendell. This is of the highest magnitude of scary out there, right? I mean, you think about all the monsters that potentially lingering in the world. I don't think that there's much scarier than the devil and demons, right? I don't think
Yeah.
it gets more scary, right? So look, I can't speak for this story itself just because again, it's an older tale. And but I think it needs to be taken seriously. I will absolutely go on the record and say that. And I do think that there is demonic possession and and now let's take this to a brighter side for just a moment. Look, if Buried Stories is not making a song about the Exorcism SWAT team, I don't know what Buried Stories is about, because to me, that may be the most fascinating thing in a way that comes out of tonight's story, because I can envision a movie or some sort of AI tale where you literally have one of those big metal heavy trucks that are bulletproof and everything, right? That the police will drive, sometimes have to bulldoze through a door or whatnot, and police officers getting out full SWAT team gear. I mean, this is not the greatest thing that should be given to the Catholic Church or whatnot. This is a I mean, that alone is
I
fascinating. And
told you
Wendell, you opened up my mind to a
I
whole
told
different
you gu
level.
I told you
Exactly.
guys last week, you never know when that 9 o'clock hour strikes and your life is reduced to one pinpoint, and now mine is the Cardinal SWAT team. Thanks.
There you
Yeah.
go. And I'll say this lastly. It's interesting because a lot of the exorcism details I see, it's usually an older guy,
Yeah.
older man,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I think that they're sick. Like physically, their strength may not be there, but I think there's something to the wisdom.
Mhm.
If you're gonna go against an enemy like this, you have to have a lot of education. You have to have a lot of knowledge. You have to have a lot of faith. And boy, do you have to have some experience. And it's my understanding Reisinger was well
Yeah.
known to have that experience. And I'll leave it
Very
at that.
experienced.
Yeah.
That's very good, Stephen. The only thing I could add to the SWAT team would be holy water grenades. They just throw in the room.
Oh my Lord. That is
Yeah.
great, Jeff. I'm telling you right now. Oh, man.
That's the last one I'm going to say. And I don't mean it to be a joke, but
No,
it's a
it is
funny thing
funny.
when you're thinking about this stuff in your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's an amazing story. This is one of those. It's one of so many. You go all the way back to biblical times. The ultimate authority was on earth here, and he would say, "Hey, leave them," and they would leave. And even some of the apostles, they, were able to exorcise demon. But there was some that there was a failed exorcism in the Bible too. If you read, some men just went in, some of the rabbis or something just went in, and the demon said, "Hey, Jesus we know, Paul we've heard of, but who are you?" And he just overpowered them, and they came running out of the house naked and ashamed, and they didn't mess with them anymore. But there is consequences, and I'm surprised that in today's society, you look around, I know everybody's focused on their job, and a lot of people are focused on sports, and maybe that's what the devil wants you to do, is focus on other things. But our focus should really be on our creator and just how much power he has, and keeping our faith with him, because the alternative is not pretty, not pretty.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes out here and manifests itself here on earth, and we got to deal with it. And so we deal with it the best way we can. And like you said, Steve, I think the older generations of the priests, they've seen a lot of things, and they may not be, physically strength, but their faith may be rock solid and real strong, and they have a lot of wisdom. So, you know, tonight, on behalf of us, if you got any comments, leave a comment below. If you got a story for us, we'd love to hear it. Send your story to buriedstories74@gmail.com. And from us, just be careful what you do out there, and be careful what doors you open. You never know what you're going to get. That's it for us tonight. Good night.
Down by the creek in Erland, the corn stood black and tall. I saw a shape on the river road with a shadow like a cross. He wore a grin like a split jaw, and boots that never made a sound. He said, boy, you better mind your knees. This is devil ground. I crossed myself and kept on, but my bones went cold inside. The wind said my name in a broken voice, and the moon would not come wide. Devil in Erling, he knows my name. He knows my name. Devil in Erling, he calls again. He calls again. Hold your breath when the branches bend. Devil in Erling at my door again. At the church on the hill at midnight, I heard that same soft tread. The lantern shook on the graveyard stone, then the whole lane went dead. Old Miss June left a Bible on her sill to keep him on. Come sunrise, there was hoof-print mud, and the page was torn and soft. I tried to run, but the road went long, and the frost bit through my shoes. I heard that laugh in the pines behind, like a train with nothing to lose. Devil in Erling, he knows my name. He knows my name. Devil in Erling, he calls again. He calls again. Hold your breath when the branches bend. Devil in Erling at my door again. If you see him by the creek bank, don't meet his hungry eye. He'll trade your dawn for a pocket full of black and leave you dry. Devil in Erling, he knows my name. He knows my name. Devil in Erling, he calls again. He calls again. Hold your breath when the branches bend. Devil in Erling at my door again.